The ceiling fan groaned as it spun lazily above lecturer Apote's office. The weak hum of electricity stuttered through the old fluorescent tube lights, casting a flickering shadow over his half-empty coffee cup and the stack of pink exam scripts on his desk. The air smelled of stale paper and cheaper color, its trademark. Choma stood stiffly before him, bright, articulate, and widely loved by her peers. She had never needed favors to pass. But this semester, something was off. Her test score, normally hovering near the top, had inexplicably dropped to barely passable. She clutched her bag tightly, eyes darting to the locked door behind her. "You're a smart girl," Apote said, folding his arms across his chest and leaning back in his seat. "But sometimes smart girls need help. A little cooperation, Choma, that's all." Her lip quivered. "I did well on that paper. Everyone knows." "It's not about what everyone knows. It's about what I mark," he interrupted, voice low. "Now, you want that great feast or not?" Choma flinched as he stood, circling the desk slowly. A hand reached for the back zipper, but he gently placed his fingers on her shoulder. Just two fingers, and that was enough. "Sir, no one has to know," he murmured. She turned sharply, slapped his hand away, and bolted for the door. He didn't follow. He didn't need to. By the time she was halfway down the corridor, tears smudging her eyeliner, Apote had already sat down, calmly erasing her name from the probation list and sipping the rest of his coffee. He'd done worse, and he had gotten away with it every time until now. The next morning, Papava Polytechnic buzzed like an electric wire. Phones lit up with the same 15-second clip. Apote's office, Chalmers' tense voice, his words barely audible but unmistakable. "You want that great feast or not?" He had forgotten the tiny CCTV pub nestled in the corner shelf, the one a former student project group had set up during the research study, and forgotten to dismantle. By 10 a.m., it was on WhatsApp groups, Twitter threads, TikTok compilations. Hashtag expose Apote trended in the States. By noon, Choma had gone silent. She'd refused press interviews. She wasn't seen in class. But by evening, the school board summoned an emergency meeting. Apote was suspended pending further investigation. Whispers of termination spread like wildfire. That night, Apote sat in his living room, sweating in the still air of his rented bungalow. The power had gone out and his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. He ignored most of the messages, except one from his lawyer. "They're going to vote you out. We sue tomorrow. Defamation. AI deepfake. Let's go on the offensive." Apote smiled. 2 days later, Apote strolled into Lecture Hall 3, where Chalmers' class gathered under subdued murmurs. He wore his usual faded suit, as though nothing had happened. No greeting, no announcement. He just stood by the whiteboard, set a black suitcase on the desk, and slowly opened it. Bundles of cash. "Good morning," he said calmly, I'm not here to teach. I'm here to make a deal. The room fell into stone silence. You've seen the news. You've seen the lies. They say I harassed one of your classmates. That video, it's doctored. It's fake. My legal team is on it. But I know the school will try to force your testimony. They will ask what you saw, what you've heard. They will ask you to betray me, to lie. He paused, scanning their faces. So, I'm offering you something better. The truth of silence. He reached for a stack of grid documents and began distributing them, one per desk. A legal contract, binding silence, just for today. When they come calling, no statements, no confessions, no betrayals. In return, he gestures to his suitcase, $1,000 each. Students look at one another, stunned. Some smirked. Some looked terrified. Others tempted. One hand went up. Deji, the class clown. You mean like no talking at all or just about the case? Just the case. Sign, collect, walk away, clean. By the end of the hour, 29 students signed. Aporti smiled. As the last student stood to leave, he called them back. Oh, one last thing, he said, reaching into his pocket. He put out a single folded paper and held it in the air. This list contains your names, all of you who signed. And guess where this list is right now? He walked slowly, dramatically, in the hands of an associate of mine. A group. Let's say you break the silence, you don't just lose the money, you invite unpleasant consequences. They don't call. They don't want. They just act. He let the silence sink in. Now go. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply filed out one by one like someone with no existence. It wasn't fear that made Musa go to the lawyer. It was disgust. He had grown up around real threats. In Makonja, where gangs meant business and blood, what Apati had just done wasn't fear. It was cowardice, weaponized as control, and he couldn't live with that silence. Later that night, he met Apati's lawyer in the parking lot behind Diamond Mall. Your client, Musa whispered, is threatening students with militants. The lawyer stiffened. Come again? I don't care what you do with this, but if anything happens to Chioma or any of us, blood's on your hands too. He walked away. The courtroom was packed. Journalists stood shoulder to shoulder. Apostle sat in a grey suit, polished and calm. His lawyer whispered in his ear just as the judge arrived. The school's lawyers were ready. Testimonies, evidence, witness lists. The judge raised a hand before proceedings began. Based on new intelligence brought before the court, she said evenly, the matter is hereby adjourned. A further hearing date will be communicated. Apote blinked. The cameras flashed, reporters scrambled. For the first time in years, Apote wasn't smiling. The morning after the court adjournment, Papava Polytechnic's hallways felt different. Students weren't speaking in public anymore, not just about Apote, but about anything. Friend groups fractured. Conversations were reduced to glances. Musa sat alone in the cafeteria, eyes scanning everyone who walked in. He noticed three students from Chalmers class leave their untouched meat and whisper outside near the generator room. Fear had metastasized. Even Deji, once loud and obnoxious, now kept his headphones in, head bowed, jumping slightly when a motorcycle backfired outside. It wasn't just fear of a party anymore. It was fear of each other. Who was the informant? Who might break? Who might trigger retaliation? Musa clenched his fist beneath the table. This wasn't silence. This was a slow death of truth. Justice Oladejo was not known for emotion, but a call from a party's lawyer the night before had shaken her. A student claims her party threatened witnesses with militant retaliation. She had heard similar stories during her early years, rural cases buried under fear, witnesses vanishing before trial. But this was a federal institution in Aruba State. If even here students were being threatened into silence, the school's head legal counsel, Mrs. Abike Musa, under anonymity, a CID detective, undercover and discreet. In the judge chambers, with the air conditioning low and a robe folded on a chair, she spoke carefully. If what we're hearing is true, Apothe's defense rests on manufactured silence. I need more, not testimony, just proof of cohesion. Musa nodded. He put out the flash drive. I recorded the moment he made the threat. Audio only. I left my voice recorder on when we all signed. Abike's eyes widened. Why didn't you give this earlier? Because I didn't know who'd buried it. Oladejo plunged the drive into her laptop. The file was labeled Silence is Death. She hit play. Choma had been silent for 5 days. She didn't return calls, didn't leave her hostel. And the day the video leaked, she had deleted all her social media. But inside her room, she kept a journal. And in it, she wrote every word a party had said to her, not just from the recorded clip, but the entire conversation. She wrote about the way he looked at her, the things he hinted at in lectures, the manipulation, the slow erosion of her sense of safety. When Musa called her that night, she let it ring 3 times. Then she answered, Choma, it's not over. I know. I gave the judge the audio. A long pause. They'd come for me if I speak, she whispered. Then we'll make sure someone hears it first. Loud enough that no one can silence it. Mrs. Abike gathered with the church, the CID, and the head of internal affairs. The plan was delicate. Step 1. Publicly, the court case would remain adjourned to avoid alerting a party. Step 2. The judge will authorize secret protective orders for Musa and Choma. Step 3. A cyber forensics team will trace the party's connections, emails, calls, bank transfers to determine whether the militant group threat was real or fabricated. Step 4. The school will prepare a separate civil lawsuit, not for harassment, but for criminal coercion and conspiracy to obstruct justice, a charge that carried federal attention. They had no margin for error. But what none of them anticipated was Apothe's next move. Apothe sensed it. Something had shifted. His lawyer was growing distant. The student had grown too quiet. One of them had broken. He received a text message late at night from a burner number. You've been compromised, pull back. He ignored it. Instead, the next morning, he submitted a motion of the court requesting a defamation suit against the judge herself, claiming personal bias and inappropriate influence. It was laughable. but bold, and it made headlines. Suspended lecturer Porty accuses judge of bias and sexual harassment case. The news cycle shifted. Aporte was muddying the waters again, but in trying to drag the court into the mud, he exposed something else: his desperation. Detective Ojo from CID sat in front of a whiteboard in the cyberforensics lab. He had just received data from Aporte's financial records. Three payments stood out, each for $150,000, sent via a proxy account to individuals linked to a known gang in Damaka, a remote area near the Papava River. He cross-referenced names. One of them, Castle Abo, was a suspect in two intimidation cases from 3 years back. There it was. Apote hadn't invented the militant group. He had outsourced fear. But this time, with Musa's audio file, Choma's written testimony, and a direct paper trail to higher threats, the court reopened the case under a sealed emergency hearing. But this time, the charges weren't just sexual harassment. Count 1, harassment of female students. Count 2, academic extortion. Count 3, witness tampering through intimidation. Count 4, criminal conspiracy with known criminals to obstruct justice. The brave student was no longer alone. 5 others stepped forward. Choma returned to class wearing no makeup, no smile, just resolve. As Aporti stepped out of his apartment the next morning to meet his lawyer, two unmarked cars boxed in. Four plainclothes officers emerged. Lecturer Porter, one asked, "Yet, you are under arrest for witness tampering, harassment, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." He opened his mouth to speak, but for once he didn't. Court Room 2B of the Papava State Judicial Complex had never held his breath the way it did that morning. Camera crews clustered outside, human rights observers, NGOs, student representatives, and even the governor's education liaison all found seats. Upon sat at the defendant's table, freshly shaved, pressed suit, but pale. No small grin this time, only the blinking tick under his left eye hinted at the chaos brewing beneath his calm exterior. Choma entered from the witness door wearing a blue blouse. Her father walked beside her, and the crowd parted. Musa was already inside, seated at the far back, jaw set like stone. When Judge Oladejo entered, the gallery stood, not in respect, but in anticipation. The trial of lecturer Porty had officially begun. First witness Musa. He stood tall, steady voice, eyes locked on our Porty. "I was in that lecture room when he laid out the contract. I signed, yes, but I recorded it, not because I wanted to betray anyone, but because I wanted to keep something safe in the case. Someone did something worse. But I recorded it, not because I wanted to betray anyone, but because I wanted to keep something safe in case someone did something worse." He paused. "He didn't just bribe us, he blackmailed us. He used fear." Second witness, Choma. Her voice cracked once, then twice, but she didn't stop. "The day he called me into his office, I thought I was going to argue for a great correction. Instead, he asked for something else. It made me feel like I didn't matter, like if I didn't do what he wanted, my degree was gone." She turned to the judge, not to the crowd. "I didn't come to ruin anyone. I came because silence almost ruined me." The courtroom didn't breathe for 10 seconds. Apoti's lawyer tried to paint the video as AI generated, a digital trap meant to frame an innocent lecturer. but a court-appointed digital forensic expert dismantled that in one sentence. This video was recorded by an analog CCTV system hardwired into the campus network. Time-stamped. No AI, no edit, pure footage. Then came the blank records. The prosecution displayed a flowchart of transactions showing money trades from a party's account to the same three names linked to Dhamaka gang activity. When confronted, Abbott refused to answer. The silence that once protected him now felt like a cage. Just when the prosecution prepared to rest its case, a man walked into the courtroom unannounced. He wore a brown uniform jacket and had a document folder under his arm. He approached the court clerk and whispered something. The clerk looked stunned. Judge Oladejo raised an eyebrow. What is this? The man introduced himself. My name is Inspector Danko. I have urgent evidence related to this case. Permission to submit under seal. The judge nodded cautiously. Proceed. Danko handed over the file. The judge skimmed the first page, her face hardening. She passed it to the prosecution. The prosecutor's voice trembled when he spoke. My lord, this is a signed statement by one of the three alleged militant group members, Kasali Abo. There was a murmur in the gallery. The statement read, Lecturer Apote contacted me and two others to monitor some students. We were told to make threats, light ones, just fear, no harm. But I pulled out after I realized that we were minors. It paid us to make it look real. There was never any actual group involved. We were just hired men that don't exist. Cabs echoed. Apote's lawyer lowered his head. The militant threat had been nothing but a bluff backed by criminals for hire. Apote's face cracked for the first time. After 2 more days of argument and final witness testimonies, the court reconvened for the verdict. Judge Oladejo read the charges one by one. Sexual harassment, guilty. Extortion, guilty. Witness intimidation, guilty. Criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty. Apote was sentenced to 28 years in prison with no option of bail, plus a $5 million compensation to be paid jointly to the victims named. He did not speak as the officers cuffed him. He simply stared at Chioma. For once, her gaze didn't waver. Chioma published an anonymous piece in the Papava Law Review titled When Silence Becomes a Weapon. It ran viral across Aruba state campuses. She was later invited to speak at a student-led legislative hearing on academic misconduct. Most transferred to another university to finish his degree, but he remained in touch with many of the students, helping set up a campus-wide legal aid and whistleblower initiative. Papava Polytechnic instituted mandatory anti-harassment training, installed an independent ombudsman, and publicly apologized to Chioma and others. Apote's name was stripped from all academic records and plaques. 6 months later, a new lecturer took over Apote's old office. On his first day, the janitor helping clean out the space found something in the storage closet, a dusty black suitcase. Inside, empty contract folders, blank cash envelopes, and a note. Fear works best when you give them a prize. The lecturer handed it over to security. Choma never heard of the suitcase again. But sometimes when she passed that hallway, she paused, not in fear, but in remembrance of what silence costs and what it takes to break it.